Sarah pressed her hands against the coffee shop window, watching the morning rush inside. She'd walked past Corner Grounds Café Tilda copyright every day for 2 weeks now, always slowing down, always moving on. The smell of fresh coffee drifted out each time the door opened, warm and inviting. But Sarah kept walking. She was 47 years old and had been deaf since birth. In all those years, she'd learned to navigate a hearing world with grace and determination. But coffee shops were still hard. The noise, the rushed baristas, the impatient customers behind her when she had to write everything down. It was easy to make coffee at home. But this morning, something made her stop. Maybe it was the autumn sunshine. Maybe it was the way the Café Tilda copyright looked so cozy and welcoming. Or maybe she was just tired of letting fear make her decisions. Sarah took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Inside, the morning crowd swirled around her. Business people checking their phones, college students hunched over laptops, parents juggling toddlers and travel mugs. The line at the counter stretched back 6 people deep. Sarah joined the line, her heart beating faster than it should. She pulled out her phone, ready to type her order and show it to the barista. She'd done this before. It would be fine. The line moved slowly. Sarah watched the barista, a young woman with pink streaks in her hair, calling out orders and working the espresso machine with practiced efficiency. Fast. Everything was so fast. When Sarah reached the counter, she held up her phone with her order typed out. Medium coffee with cream, please. The barista squinted at the screen, nodded quickly, and turned to make the drink. She called out something, probably the pricier, but Sarah couldn't read her lips. The barista pointed to the card reader, and Sarah paid, relieved it was over. But then confusion. The barista handed her a small coffee, black, not what she'd ordered. Sarah's stomach tightened. She held up her phone again, pointing to the screen. The barista frowned, trying to understand. The line behind Sarah was growing. She could feel the impatience, even if she couldn't hear the sighs. Sarah's hands began to shake. She started to sign, then stopped, forgetting for a moment that it wouldn't help. She reached for her phone to type something else, dropped it, bent down to pick it up. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. This was why she didn't come to coffee shops. She was about to just take the wrong coffee and leave when someone gently touched her arm. Sarah looked up to see a man, maybe in his late 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes. He was holding the hand of a little girl, perhaps 7 or 8, with dark braids and a backpack covered in unicorn stickers. The man smiled at Sarah, and then, slowly and clearly, he began to sign. "Can I help?" Sarah's eyes widened. She signed back, her hands trembling slightly. "I ordered coffee with cream." "But this is wrong." The man nodded, understanding. He turned to the barista and spoke, then signed to Sarah again. "She'll remake it. Medium coffee with cream." The barista's expression softened as she understood. She quickly made a new coffee, this time with cream, and handed it to Sarah with an apologetic smile. Sarah clutched the cup, warm in her hands, and signed to the man. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "You're welcome," he signed back. Then he introduced himself, finger-spelling his name. "David." He gestured to the little girl. "This is my daughter, Emma." Emma looked up at Sarah and signed, with the careful precision of a child still learning. "Hello. I like your scarf." Sarah's heart melted. She signed back, "Thank you. I like your backpack. Unicorns are magical." Emma beamed. David signed to Sarah again. "Would you like to sit with us? We come here every Saturday morning. It's our tradition." Sarah hesitated. Then she looked at this kind man and his daughter, at the table by the window where they were headed, at the coffee in her hand that she'd almost given up on. She nodded. They sat together, and slowly, Sarah learned their story. David was a widower. His wife, Emma's mother, had passed away when Emma was just 3 years old. He'd raised Emma on his own, working as a teacher at the local elementary school. Emma was deaf, born that way, just like Sarah. When Emma was diagnosed, David signed, his movements thoughtful and practiced. I knew I had to learn sign language. Not just learn it, but really embrace it. I wanted her to know that her way of communicating was beautiful, that she was perfect exactly as she is. Sarah watched his hands, the way he signed with such fluency and expression. She'd met hearing people who learned sign language before, but few who signed with such genuine comfort and joy. It changed everything for me, David continued. Learning to see the world the way Emma sees it. Learning to communicate in a language that's so much more than just words. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve and signed, "Do you want to see my drawings?" For the next hour, Sarah sat with David and Emma, sipping her coffee made exactly right and looking at Emma's colored pencil drawings of unicorns and rainbows. They talked about everything and nothing. David shared how he'd struggled in the early years, learning to braid hair and pack lunches while also learning sign language and navigating the deaf community's resources. Emma told Sarah about her school, her friends, her favorite teacher who was also deaf. Sarah realized she was smiling more than she had in months, maybe years. When Emma excused herself to go to the restroom, David signed to Sarah more seriously. "I saw what happened earlier, at the counter. I hope I didn't overstep." Sarah shook her head firmly. "You saved me. I was about to run out of here and never come back." "I've seen Emma face situations like that," David signed. "The world isn't always patient, isn't always understanding. But I want her to know she belongs everywhere. Coffee shops, restaurants, everywhere." "You're a good father," Sarah signed. David's eyes grew a little misty. "I try. Some days are harder than others. Raising a child alone, it's—" He paused, searching for the words. "It's lonely sometimes. But Emma, she's my whole world." Sarah understood that loneliness. She'd been single for 5 years now, her last relationship ending when her partner admitted he was tired of the extra complications of being with someone who was deaf. She'd built a good life for herself, a job she loved as a graphic designer, a small apartment she'd made cozy, friends who cared about her. But there was loneliness in it too. The feeling of being on the outside, always adapting to everyone else's world. When Emma returned, she signed to Sarah, "Will you come back next Saturday, please?" Sarah looked at this child with hopeful eyes, at her father who'd shown such simple kindness, at the coffee shop that suddenly felt less intimidating. "Yes," she signed. "I'd love that." And she did come back the next Saturday, and the one after that. It became a routine Saturday mornings at Corner Grounds Café. Copyright with David and Emma. The pink-haired barista, whose name was Jessica, learned some basic signs. She'd greet Sarah with a wave and a smile, already starting to make her regular order. David and Sarah talked about everything during those Saturday mornings. He told her about his wife, Melissa, who'd been a musician, how he still played her favorite songs sometimes, even though the house was quiet and Emma couldn't hear them. Sarah told him about her work, her aging parents who lived across the country, her sister who was her best friend but didn't quite understand what it was like to be deaf in a hearing world. Emma needs more deaf adults in her life, David signed one morning. Role models, people who can show her all the possibilities. "I'd be honored," Sarah signed back, meaning it completely. She started spending more time with them outside of Saturday mornings. She came to Emma's school play, sitting in the front row while Emma signed her lines with exaggerated expressions that made everyone laugh. She helped Emma with a project about deaf culture, sharing her own experiences and introducing Emma to other members of the deaf community. And somewhere along the way, without quite noticing when it happened, David became more than just a kind stranger who'd helped her order coffee. One Saturday in December, when snow was falling softly outside the café copyright windows, Emma signed something to her father, giggling. David's cheeks turned slightly red, but he smiled. "What?" Sarah signed, curious. Emma, with the straightforward honesty of children, signed to Sarah, "I told Dad he smiles differently when you're here." A happy smile. Sarah felt her own cheeks warm. She glanced at David, who was trying to look everywhere except at her. Finally, he signed, "She's not wrong. You've brought a lot of light into our lives, Sarah, both of us. Sarah's heart felt too full for words, even signed ones. So she just reached across the table and took his hand. He squeezed back, and Emma clapped her hands in delight. The pink-haired barrister, Jessica, brought over 3 hot chocolates on the housey with extra whipped cream on Emma's. She'd been watching their friendship blossom all these months, and her smile said she approved. As they sat together, the 3 of them, snow falling outside and warmth surrounding them inside, Sarah thought about that morning months ago when she'd almost walked past the café tilde copyright again. When fear had almost won. If David hadn't signed to her that day, if he hadn't offered such simple kindness, she might never have come back. She would have missed all of these of the Saturday morning tradition, Emma's laughter and stories, the feeling of belonging, the unexpected possibility of love blooming at 50. She'd spent so much of her life feeling like the world wasn't built for her, like she had to work twice as hard to fit in. But David and Emma had shown her something different. That kindness could bridge any gap. That connection wasn't about hearing or not hearing, it was about really seeing each other, really understanding. David was watching her, that soft smile still on his face. He signed, "What are you thinking about?" Sarah signed back, "I'm thinking about coffee." About how scared I was to order it, and how one small act of kindness changed everything. Sometimes, David signed thoughtfully, the smallest gestures matter the most. A hand on an arm, a simple question, a willingness to help. Emma tugged on both their sleeves, and when they looked at her, she signed, "And now we're a family." The adults exchanged glances. It was too soon to call it that, really. But Emma, in her child's wisdom, had seen what they were both beginning to feel. That these Saturday mornings had become something precious. That this unlikely friendship had become something more rare. A chosen family, bound not by blood but by understanding, patience, and genuine care. "Yes, sweetheart," David signed to his daughter, his eyes still on Sarah. Something like that. Outside, the snow continued to fall on the quiet street. Inside Corner Grounds Café tilde copyright, 3 people sat together in comfortable silence, occasionally signing to each other, occasionally just being present. The coffee was hot, the company was warm, and Sarah had never felt more at home. She'd walked past this café tilde copyright for weeks, afraid to enter. Now she couldn't imagine her life without these Saturday mornings, without David's patient kindness, without Emma's bright spirit. All because one man had taken a moment to sign a simple message, "Can I help?" Sometimes, Sarah thought, that's all it takes. Someone willing to meet you where you are. Someone who sees you struggling and doesn't turn away. Someone whose small act of kindness reminds you that you're not alone, that you belong, that the world has room for you exactly as you are. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that someone stays. They become part of your story, part of your Saturday mornings, part of your heart. Sarah looked at David and Emma, these 2 people who'd lit up her world with their acceptance and warmth, and she smiled. The smile of someone who'd been found when she didn't even realize she was lost. It was, she thought, the best cup of coffee she'd ever had.